Taken from the Garabandal Journal. On September 23, 1968, Padre Pio died in the odor of sanctity at the age of 81, after having lived one of the most extraordinary lives in the history of the Church. The famed stigmatist, the first priest to bear the wounds of Christ in his flesh, was remarkable for a number of reasons. In addition to his great holiness, goodness walking in the words of his fellow friars, and the stigmata which caused ongoing martyrdom that lasted more than 50 years, Padre Pio possessed a superabundance of charismatic gifts: visions, perfume, healing, bilocation, reading of hearts, and prophecy. He was also one of the Church's great confessors, spending many hours each day hearing the confessions of people who came to his monastery in San Giovanni Rotondo in Italy, from all over the world. Every day they came in droves, first to hear his Mass, which was a remarkable experience in itself, and then to take their turn, which sometimes meant a wait of 2 weeks, to confess their sins to the humble Capuchin Father. He had a hotline to heaven, they believed, and could let them know exactly where they stood in the eyes of the Almighty God. After having suffered during the earliest years of his priestly life from censorship, disbelief, and calumny, his stature eventually grew until he was regarded as a living saint by everyone, from the humblest peasant farmer to the Pope. Because of his reputation for holiness and great charismatic gifts, his advice on matters of discernment was highly sought and carried tremendous weight. And it wasn't a question of his opinion, it was believed that he knew. It pleased God that his servant Padre Pio should be intimately connected with the Garabandal events. Now some people unfavorably disposed towards the alleged apparitions have denied association between Padre Pio and Garabandal, but their arguments disintegrate in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Being an obedient son of the Church, what Padre Pio would not do is speak before the Church had spoken, and since the Church had made no public pronouncement on the authenticity of the Garabandal events, neither would he. Now this may have given rise to the denials. However, in private with his fellow friars and certain individuals, he did not hesitate to express his belief in the apparitions. A group of Spaniards once asked him if Our Lady was really appearing at Garabandal. He answered, "Are you still asking about that? How long do you expect her to appear there? She has been appearing for 8 months already." The evidence of Padre Pio's relationship to the Garabandal events goes beyond oral testimony. On March 3, 1962, a letter that bore no signature was received in San Sebastian de Garabandal, addressed to the 4 young visionaries: Conchita, Mariloli, Jacinta, and Mary Cruz. This incident was reported by Dr. Celestino Ortiz, an excellent witness, and is recounted in the book She Went in Haste to the Mountain, from which the following excerpt is taken. Felix Lopez, a former student of the Seminario Mayor de Deno, who is now the school teacher of Garabandal, was meeting with people in Conchita's kitchen. The girl received a letter that she didn't understand, and she requested him to translate it. It was in Italian, and Felix, after reading it, said, "By its style, it could well be Padre Pio." Conchita asked him if he knew Padre Pio's address, and on receiving an affirmative answer, asked him to help her compose a letter to answer it and express her appreciations. Completing the letter, they left it on the kitchen table unfolded. After a while, Conchita went into ecstasy and recited the rosary. Returning to her normal state, the teacher said to her, "Did you ask the Virgin if the letter was from Padre Pio?" "Yes," Conchita replied, "and she gave me a secret answer to send to him." Conchita went up in her room and came down later with a paper written by hand in front of everybody. She put the paper in the envelope which had been addressed by the teacher to Padre Pio, and she sealed it. The letter that had come to Conchita without a signature, without a return address, but with an Italian stamp, said this: Dear children, at 9 o'clock in the morning, the Holy Virgin told me to say to you, O blessed young girls of San Sebastian de Garabandal, I promise you that I will be with you until the end of the centuries, and you will be with me until the end of the world, and later united with me in the glory of paradise. I am sending you a copy of the Holy Rosary of Fatima, which the Virgin told me to send to you. The Blessed Virgin dictated this rosary. She wants it to be propagated for the salvation of sinners and the preservation of humanity from the terrible punishments which the good God is threatening it. I give you only one counsel. Pray and make others pray, because the world is at the beginning of perdition. They do not believe in you or your conversations with the Lady in White, but they will believe when it will be too late. On October 9th, 1975, the staff of Needles magazine, which is now Garabandal magazine, conducted a taped interview with Conchita and asked her about this surprising letter said to have been dictated by Padre Pio. Question: Conchita, do you remember anything about the letter? Conchita replied, I remember receiving in the mail a letter addressed to myself and the other girls. I wondered about the things that were in the letter, and as it was not signed, I tucked it into my pocket until I saw the Blessed Mother that day. When she appeared, I showed her the letter and asked her who sent it to us. The Blessed Mother said it was from Father Pio. Being that I did not know who Father Pio was, I questioned her no further. After the apparition, I told the people about the letter, and there was a seminarian present who explained to me about Father Pio and where he was from. Then I wrote a letter to Father Pio saying that when he visits my country, I would like to see him. I got a reply. Father Pio wrote to me and said, Do you think I could go up a chimney? I was only 12 years old at the time. I did not understand about the cloisters. In February 1967, Conchita arrived in Rome with her mother, a Spanish priest, Father Luna, Professor Medi, and Princess Cecile. She had been called there by Cardinal Ottaviani, prefect of the Holy Office, which is now called the Sacred Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. It was during this visit that Conchita had a private audience with Pope Pius VI, in which only 5 persons were present with the pontiff. We have this on the reliable testimony of Professor Medi, then president of the European Associations on Atomic Energy, and a friend of the Pope who was one of the 5. Since Conchita had to wait a day before meeting with Cardinal Ottaviani, Professor Medi suggested they had some extra time they go see Padre Pio at San Giovanni Rotondo. Here is Conchita's account of the visit. We all agreed and drove in Professor Medi's rented car to the monastery. We arrived around 9 o'clock in the evening, and we were told we could not see him until the next morning at his 5 o'clock Mass. Before Mass, Father Luna and the professor went into the sacristy. Professor Medi later told me what happened there. He said that Father Luna told Father Pio that the princess from Spain was there to see him. Father Pio told Father Luna, I don't feel very well and won't be able to see her till later on in the day. Then Professor Medi said, there is someone else here to see you as well. Conchita wants to speak with you. Padre Pio replied, Conchita of Garabandal? Come back at 8 o'clock this morning. When we arrived, we were brought into a small room, a cell, which had a bed, a chair, and a small table. I asked Padre Pio if this was his room and if he slept there, to which he replied, Oh no, you cannot see my room. This is a rich room. At the time I did not realize what a holy man Padre Pio was, as I know him to be now. I was very young. I was only 16. Question: Who was in the room with you? Conchita replied to the journalist, It was just my mother, Father Luna, and a priest from the monastery who spoke Spanish and took a lot of pictures. I don't remember the princess or the professor being there. Question: Can you tell us what was said during your visit with Padre Pio? Conchita replied, I only remember a little. I do remember that the priest who had been taking the pictures asked permission from Padre Pio, who responded, You have been taking them since you arrived. I remember that I had the crucifix that Our Lady had kissed, and I said to Padre Pio, This cross was kissed by the Blessed Virgin. Would you like to kiss it? Padre Pio took the crucifix and placed it in the palm of his left hand, over the stigmata. Then he took my hand and placed it over the crucifix and closed his fingers around my hand. Then with his right hand he blessed my hand and the crucifix. He did the same with my mother, when she asked him to bless her rosary that had also been kissed by the Blessed Virgin. I was kneeling the whole time I was with him. He held me by the hand, together with the cross, while he spoke to me. Padre Pio and the miracle. Padre Pio's involvement in Garabandal events culminated in his being granted the privilege that only one other person had been granted. That was to see the miracle. The only other person who received this privilege was Father Louis Andre. The night of August 8th, 1961, he had a vision of the miracle while the girls were in ecstasies in the pines. The following day, Father Andre passed away while he was on his way home. He saw the great miracle before he died. One of the prophecies to come from Our Lady at Garabandal regarding the miracle was that the Holy Father would see it from wherever he was, and Padre Pio would see it too. When the famous stigmatist died in September 1968, Conchita was perplexed as to why the prophecy apparently didn't come true. 1 month later, her mind was put at ease and she was given a precious souvenir as well. On October 16, 1968, Conchita received a telegram from Lourdes which bore the name of a woman from Rome who Conchita knew. The telegram requested that Conchita go to Lourdes to receive a letter addressed to her from Padre Pio. Father Alfred Combe and Bernard Lehoulier of France were in the village at the time and consented to drive Conchita and her mother to Lourdes. They left that very night. In the rush, Conchita forgot her passport. When they got to the border, they were detained for 6 hours, and only due to the granting of a special passport signed by the military governor of Iran were they able to cross over into France. At Lourdes, they met Padre Pio's emissaries from Italy, among whom was Father Bernardino Sinamo, who was not from San Giovanni, but another monastery. He was, however, well known by Padre Pio and Father Pellegrino, the latter being the one who looked after Padre Pio during his final years and who transcribed the note which appears on this page that had been dictated by Padre Pio. Father Sinamo told Conchita that he did not believe in the apparitions of Garabandal until Padre Pio told him to give her the veil that would cover his face after his death. The note and the veil were given to Conchita. She then asked Father Sinamo, How is it that the Virgin told me that Padre Pio was supposed to see the miracle and he has died? He answered, He saw the miracle before he died. He told me so himself. When Conchita returned home from Lourdes, she decided to write about the whole incident to a friend from Madrid. Conchita, in her 1975 interview, said, I had the cloth in front of me while I wrote the letter when all of a sudden the room was filled with a fragrance. I had heard about the fragrances from Padre Pio, but I never paid any attention to them. The whole room filled with such a strong smell of perfume that I began to cry. It was the first time I experienced this. It happened after his death. Padre Pio will go down in church history as one of the greatest figures of the modern era, a man unparalleled in his time. It is not without significance that this extraordinary son of St. Francis, so devoted to Our Lady, who labored so long and arduously in God's vineyard for the good of souls, should be irrevocably linked to the apparitions of Garabandal. Thank you so much for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. God bless you. To Jesus through Mary.